What's up and welcome to the Fervent 4. Did you know that only 4% of businesses ever cross the annual $1 million revenue mark? Question mark. I'm Zach Miller, author of Anomaly. With me today, my co-host Tim Ryan, lead man at StartWheel.org. Thank you so much for joining us. The Fervent 4 is a weekly show each and every Thursday dedicated to sharing insights into growing a world-class business, no matter the climate. Today, we are delighted to be joined by Josh Green, who heads up the statewide ICAP program, a cohort-based business growth solution. Was there enough buzzwords in that description that I came up with, Josh?
Absolutely. Just enough.
What do you think about buzzwords? I mean, like, are they as a consumer, are they something that you like get into? Like, do you get excited about? Just like if a company has enough of the buzzwords that are appropriate for the thing that you're looking for, does that hook you, or where are you on kind of the buzzword keyword kind of game of the internet, if you will?
I'm very anti-buzzword. I actually didn't get an undergraduate degree in business because of buzzwords. So happy to share that story, but I don't think there's anything wrong with them for people who want to use them. I just personally don't like to use them.
You think people throw up buzzwords as a Hail Mary to sound smart?
Yeah. I'd really like to synergize on some ways that we can populate some buckets.
Unpack that a little bit more and
Yes.
see what, pull that thread. Gosh, there's so many. Some of the different telecons that I listen to are just bananas when it comes to that stuff. But for those people that don't know, explain to us what ICAP is and what the premise of the program is for. Hopefully we didn't, everything was swimmingly perfect before the show. It looks like we lost Josh.
We can continue talking about buzzwords. Let's talk about that. So Tim, as someone who works with startups for a long time, businesses for a long time, like you recently dabbled into investing into businesses. When you first hear about a business, is that something that does get you? Is it something that because it is an interesting thing. Like, I mean, I think there obviously is a key word in there that you have to look up, right? So like, if we think about maybe one of our favorite things is working out recently. And so we would look at Strava. So you go to strava.com and they say like, I could just look at it, but I think it says something like from memory, something like the best tool for runners and cyclists for training, something like that, right? I mean, there has to be some sort of hook in there.
Yeah, well, and I think that right now the biggest buzzwords that are out there are machine learning and artificial intelligence. So you're always hearing people talk about ML and AI. Yeah, I have this. My startup is an
app for runners and cyclists. That's what it is. So
yeah, and I think that's that's fair. But I mean, when you're listening to a founder pitch their business, and they're talking about how they have a machine learning, artificial intelligence based platform that does this, that, or the other thing. It's just like, and you know that they don't have any expertise in machine learning or AI. It's like, so the immediate question is, okay, well then who's doing that? Who on your team is providing that function or writing that code in the back end so that your whatever it is that you're making does what it does?
It's interesting too, because I just think about like the pitches that I've seen over the years, and there's been some good ones, there's been some bad ones, and it is similar to what you're saying, where people will throw up numbers. I think of as, oh, if I get 1% of this, we're gonna have billions in users, and I'm like, okay, like I don't know how many users like Bookface has at this point, but like my guess is it's not that many billions of users. I'm sure Gavin Anderson in the backstage could figure that out, but like Facebook, Google, YouTube, those are probably the only accounts that really have billions of accounts. So like, it's so weird how people pitch stuff like that,
right?
And people gravitate and get hooked to it. I mean, I guess it's just a marketing thing, right? Is where they're like, oh, it's so exciting, 2.7 billion monthly active users. And that active user, monthly active users, is important if you ever watch the hit show on HBO Silicon Valley, because we know that that can be quite manipulated, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and everyone has their own way of measuring active users too. Because it was what neighborhood? Yeah, next door. You know, they view active users. If you just open the email that they send out, they consider that an active user. It has nothing to do with going to the website or anything like that. So I mean, it's definitely loosey goosey how they measure that.
All right, I'm going to try and attempt to do my best, ESPN anchor here. Hey, we have Josh Green coming back at some point. We're going to interview him. We're going to talk to him about business growth for a program that he runs called ICAP statewide program. But, you know, technical difficulties do happen, but the show must go on. But in the meantime, we're going to roll with the punches, as they say, because, you know, you're here to watch the show, and the show must go on. And here we are. Tim, what's on your mind these days?
Well, I just started Boston Marathon training for me just started this week, so that weighs heavy.
How often are you? I mean, so you're listening to podcasts when you are podcasts or books or things like that. How often are those business related?
Oh, that's all I listen to.
Exclusively, okay.
Yeah. I mean, my goal in life, man, and it's not really, really hard, but my goal in life is to surround myself with people that are smarter than I am. So as long as I surround myself with people that are smarter than me, then hopefully some of that rubs off and I can learn a thing or two.
The hardest thing, I think, is always when you hear a book and you're listening to a book and you hear something like that's super valuable and you're like, how do I remember that later in the day so that I can retain that? Is there a strategy that you've used to try and help?
So what I do when I'm doing that, so I'm running, I'll remember, I know what time I started, and I'll try to get to drop a pin, so to speak, and be like, all right, I heard this nugget when I was this far into the podcast, and then if it's really, really good, I'll go back to that point and re-listen to it so that I can jot that down, or I'll just keep on repeating that thought over and over and over again until I get home. But yeah, that's the one downfall. I wish that there was a way that you could, you can bookmark stuff on Audible, but when you're looking at distance, time, and pace, and all that kind of stuff, you really
what happens
there's not a solution.
A second thing pops up that's valuable.
Yeah, I just hope that I can remember it. But like, I don't know. What are you listening to these days?
I'm re-listening. So I haven't really been listening to a lot. I've just been listening to Spotify music for no reason. I mean, I think in 2020, I read like 70 books and I was just like over it. So then I was like, I'm going to reread my favorite books. And I did that for about 6 months of the year. But like I started listening Monday or Tuesday. I'm pulling up Audible to remember the name. It's by Michael Jordan's coach. Maybe I've told you to read this before.
Oh yeah.
It is called I think it's Tim Grover or Tim Glover, Relentless.
Yeah,
Tim Grover, Relentless, from good to great to unstoppable. And so he's got this concept where he talks with, or he kind of shares how he got Michael Jordan as a client, which is interesting, and then what he does to coach some of the best athletes ever. And so I don't know, I'm an hour and 10 minutes into it. What speed do you listen to your books at?
Usually, I'm trying to think what Audible is. I think either 1.5 or 1.25 or 1.5, depending on how fast the narrator is, though, because some narrators talk faster than others, and then then it's too quick. But usually 1.25 or 1.5, one of those two.
I remember when I read my book, like physically read it. Spoke it, whatever the correct vernacular is in that case. I just read it like I normally would, like this, like, I don't know. Let's read a page real quick. Throw some flair and personality into your profile pic and make it more fun. If you look like everyone else, just like that, right? And then so some guy was like, oh, I listened to your book on 3x. And I was like, 3x? That seems like ridiculous.
Yeah. I remember talking to somebody and they were like, yeah, I listen to all my books at that speed. And I'm thinking to myself, either you're really, really smart or I'm not nearly as smart as you, or you're just not retaining anything, because that's just way too much.
This book is at 1.4x. I think the highest I've ever been able to do is like 1.75, but it really depends on the narrator, obviously, right?
Yeah,
so
100%.
It's a very interesting situation, if you will. Still waiting to get Josh Green back on the line. Must be a storm or something going on. He did let us know beforehand that the internet was a little wild out there.
Yeah, he lost power twice before there. Well,
and he is popping back on. We will continue to chat for a second as we see him. Once he gives us a thumbs up that he can hear us, that his microphone is good, we will bring him back on, because there's nothing more exciting than live, like a live show where you have to roll with the punches. I recently was watching, I have Disney Plus, which I think is a phenomenal OTT platform, and they have some really good flicks on that. So I was rewatching
Frozen.
No, Frozen. Yes. No, I was watching. It's got Hugh Jackman in it. It's not Wolverine. It's something else. He's it's where he's the Barnum and Bailey guy.
Greatest Showman.
The Greatest Showman. Back with us, Josh Green, to answer that question for me. Thank you. If you guys have never watched Greatest Showman,
that is good.
It is phenomenal.
Well done.
And I mean, it's got a great entrepreneurial thing. How to make sure that family stays into it. Like, it's a story about grit, and I think that's something that I don't know if grit is taught. I don't know if resilience is taught, but it's a great flick, and it's got a couple good tunes in it too that you can just sing along. So, welcome back, Josh. Hopefully everything will stay here.
Yeah,
Tim,
did I lose power? But my backup internet failed me as well, so my apologies.
All good. I think we're getting ready to kick off, giving you the opportunity to let people know what ICAP is and what the program is designed for.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'll try this again. So ICAP stands for the Innovation Commercialization Assistance Program, and we're a program of George Mason University and the Virginia SBDC Network. And at its most basic level, our program is meant to provide technology and innovation-driven companies in the Commonwealth the mentorship that they need in order to get from where they are to where they want to be. So that's the short and sweet of it.
Yeah, and what's I guess the biggest piece, as I understand it, is so you have an entrepreneur, they want to start a business. And a lot of times they'll just jump into it and just start going, thinking that that's the right thing to do, which many cases it is. However, you enable them to take a step back, and you want them to talk to potential customers and get that feedback from them to find out, am I solving the problem in the right way? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. So the ideal place to start is an entrepreneur who last night they had an idea and they drew it up on the back of a pizza box. And this morning they put it in a paragraph form and emailed me. And within our program, what we do is we use the lean startup methodology as it's taught by the National Science Foundation's I-Corps program. And it is focused on validating a business model. So who is the customer? What is the need in the market? What is the value of what you're doing? And then is there a sufficiently large enough market of people who need your solution to create a viable business? And once we can confirm that, then we get into, do you have the team to execute on it? Can you build a minimal viable product that meets just the needs of what that customer has asked for? And then from there, what do you need in order to grow? So that could be, you need some partners to help you distribute, or you need a robust supply chain, or you need funding in order to move forward. So we take folks ideally from the very beginning and help guide them through the path, which we call accelerating commercialization, in order to get to the market faster by avoiding going down the wrong path because you're making assumptions about the market.
So it's interesting that you used a couple of those buzzwords, back to buzzwords, right? So target customers and making, I feel like when a customer or a business is looking at throwing out something new, right? Whether that be a product, a service, whatever, magic. They take the lean startup methodology that says, hey, go question 20, 40, 50 people that you think are your target customers. They're going to give you some sort of information. And then hopefully you can make a better business decision off of that information. Where I question that, or where I would worry about that, is how do you then recognize that that person's actually willing to become a customer, not just that they give you good business information, right? Because there's a huge difference between, hey, I'm going to give you this information, it seems feasible and right, versus, hey, actually, I'm going to give you information and I'm going to buy this thing too, because they're very different things. And I feel like a lot of people float that line and don't get the result that they want because they go too far on one thing and they're not actually getting a credit card out and swiping that thing, if you will.
Sure, absolutely. That's a great point. So first and foremost, the idea is initially focusing on the beachhead market, that first customer. And when you do a customer discovery interview, you're not talking about your product, so you're not selling. You are asking about what they're doing related to a particular topic now. So if, we're talking about, the first thing I think of is a bank and ATM. So what do we know? We can go out and we can talk to people. Hey, what do you do? We'll talk about this in the aspect of, 30 years ago. What do you do when you need money? So generally it's somebody going to a bank and they are making a withdrawal. So you ask them about that process and then you say, all right, well, banks are open from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6. What do you do outside of that? Well, I'm kind of out of luck. If it's an emergency, well, then I'll go to, a convenience store and I'll get a cash advance for, 50% interest. And so if we know that they're willing to spend 50% of the amount of money that they're taking out, then that shows that person is already spending money. It's not that they're going to spend money specifically on your product, but they know, or through that interview, that they're spending money to solve that problem. And it's a big enough problem where if they're taking out $20, they're willing to spend 10 in order to get that if it's an emergency or short term. So, looking at it from the bank's perspective, that's a pretty good incentive for them to say, hey, let's spend money on a solution that can get people to, for no cost to them, but allows them to do banking and gives them an added value for being a customer of ours, that we want to make sure that we're solving that problem for them. So rather than giving that money to a third party, we can retain that customer and maybe sell them more products because we're giving them a solution that solves a problem that they actually have.
Yeah, and with that, what is there a number of people that you recommend people that they talk to in terms of how many customers should someone look to talk to before they launch something?
If you would have only not said the before they launch part, I would have.
Or how many customers should someone talk to?
Yeah. So I'm going to follow the advice of somebody, and I'm going to answer the question first that I wanted you to ask, and then I'll answer the question you actually asked.
Perfect.
But, the idea of customer discovery, it should never end. There is no magic number for how many people you need to talk to. Ultimately, as you launch your business, you grow your business, your customer should be the center of your universe, because if they're not being supported and you're not meeting their needs, you're ultimately going to go the way of, the Kmarts of the world, the decline of Bank of America, where if you're not listening to the needs, you're going to misstep, and then somebody else is going to step in and overtake you. In terms of before you launch, there are a number of different answers to that. So generally, it takes somewhere between 10 to 40 interviews for somebody to start to really get into a rhythm of their understanding what questions to ask, how to ask them, how to ask follow-up questions, and really just get good at interviewing. And then you're going to ask different questions related to different, aspects of your business model. So you're going to be doing customer discovery on your potential suppliers, on potential channel partners, on people about the need in the market. And then you're also going to ask them questions about, okay, well, we established that you do spend money on this problem. Can you tell me how much you're spending on the problem to those same people or to people in new interviews? So generally, we talk to folks that before they're launching their prototype, their MVP, whatever it may be, that you're talking about 100 to 200 interviews across a wide range of topics. And this is done in parallel with all the other things that founders should be doing to start their business.
Right.
And this is continue.
And it's super, super scary. I'm sure that just like me and Zach, you've talked to hundreds of entrepreneurs, and it's so scary for them to talk to to do these interviews. But at the same time, it's like before you start a business, before you sink your entire life savings, or before you max out credit cards, or however you're going to fund your business, you have got to talk to people to find out that you're solving the right problem, that people are going to be willing to pay for the service or product that you have. And yet they don't want to do it. But it's like, before you go buy
if you're too afraid to even talk to someone, like what's
a
your
lot of it
solution
comes
for
down
that?
to people are, I'll give you an example. We've worked with a few folks that, they've spent 30 years in an industry, and based on their specific experience, they said, okay, I'm going to create this solution. And they put their life savings, and they even borrow from friends and family in order to create this prototype. And then they go to the people who they think are going to buy this prototype, and they find out that nobody actually wants it.
Because it's their problem, not someone else's.
Exactly. Or they're solving it in the way that they think it should be solved, but that's not in line with what an industry or regulation may be.
Do you think that something like lean startup methodology, the ICAP program, is good for your standard tech startup specifically? Or because with the Small Business Development Center, a lot of their clients are kind of your run-of-the-mill shop, service providers type of shops. Do you think that this style of business programming is something that would be good across the board, or do you think it's more
this is for anybody? So our program's funding is specifically for technology companies. So we only work with technology startups. However, the idea of customer discovery and business model validation through talking to folks in the market can apply to a bakery, a retail shop, somebody who's doing consulting. It's at its core, it's talking to customers or potential customers and understanding what they need. So anybody can benefit from this model. And there are a lot of resources out there if anybody's interested in lean startup that certainly you can take for free. Udacity is a program that they offer a free course in lean startup. There are a number of great books written by a few top people, both on the straddle the line between the academic side and the private sector side. And it's an incredible way to look at things so that you're making decisions based off of real information and you're putting your best foot forward before you're putting too much time and money into something.
You had me at a bakery.
Yeah, but it's huge though. And this is what we were talking about before, Zach. It's like, if there was a time, if you're running or if you're out, this is the one takeaway that we want everyone to have from this particular program is the importance of what you're talking about. If you look at, before you buy a house, probably the most expensive asset that you're ever going to purchase in a lifetime, you think about the fact that you're going to do market research on the neighborhood, what the schools might be like. You're going to talk to a realtor, ask questions there. You're going to have a home inspector come and take a look at the house, see if there's anything that needs to be fixed. You're going to be asking all of these questions and doing your due diligence. And what the ICAP program is essentially telling you to do the exact same thing for your business, which you're going to be putting everything into in order for it to be successful. So to skip that step, it's almost a death sentence.
It's a good analogy too.
Yeah. It's one of those things that most people don't want to do it. Zach, to your point that you made a little earlier, is that most people think of their idea as their baby and it's cute and it's cuddly. And they
And it's
don't
gonna
want
make them
anybody to say,
billions.
yes, they believe it will. And they don't want to have anybody tell them that their baby is ugly. And they're deathly afraid of that. And it's
Right.
easier to spend their time working to perfect their thing, their widget, their baby, than it is to actually go out and test it in the market before they're going too far down the path.
If you think about this too, historically, you would think about your 157-page business plan that people would write up, a ton of hypotheses on, a ton of like predictions on what they think. When in fact, if you really think about this new model, and I remember when I first started introducing something like this to people maybe a decade ago, they were like, this is the stupidest thing in the world. And I was just like, well, I mean, you're actually talking to real people. Like you're not playing the guessing game, which is the problem in a lot of this stuff where your people are like, oh, well, I think my company's worth this. I think my company is worth that, whatever. I mean, those are just guesses in a lot of these cases, right? And so a company is worth what someone's willing to pay for it, is really the answer, right?
Absolutely.
But, so do you ever get feedback from that, or people over that now where it's like, this is the new way to do it, or people still kind of pushing back saying, no, I need to write the 177-page business plan?
You get all types. So I think that a lot of people are taking stock of what do funders want at the end of the day. And most of the folks that are in the angel or the venture space within the Commonwealth, at least we work with, they want to see a validated business model. They want to make sure that you have traction. And by traction, that generally means that you have confirmed pilots, that people are using the product, they're giving you feedback, or you've made some early sales in a specific market and you know why those companies are buying. So it's, I think, being widely accepted. I think there are a number of people who maybe just don't understand more the timeline when it comes to business model versus business plan. The way that I describe it to folks is that it's very difficult to create a marketing plan, which should be part of a business plan, if you don't know who the customer is. So, we want to make sure that rather than trying to spend money to market to everybody between the age of, 18 and 82, who's a man or a woman, and they have an income between $10,000 and $200,000 a year, that's a real wide range. And it's, never going to be something that you can market to everybody. But if you say, all right, well, my target is men between 30 and 40 who make between, $50,000 and $70,000 a year, have a college education and are working in a business that requires them to travel 100 plus days a year, that gets you into a real, very specific market to where you can target that person and you can understand for your beachhead market, that first market, who you're going to be going after.
And that's super counterintuitive, but it's so important. Yeah, I mean, it's like I always tell everybody, determine who your target market is, segment it, and then narrow it down even more. Because in addition to what you're talking to, there is nothing worse than bringing on a customer or a client who is not in your target market or target area. Bringing on the worst or someone who's not supposed to be your customer as your customer it can be an absolute nightmare. And
Absolutely.
People don't realize that until they're in it.
A lot of people, to that point, they say like a sale is a sale. And I agree, money coming in the door is great. But if it takes you away from an efficient revenue generation process, then that's where you get into
over
trouble.
time,
And if you get
so you can recycle it,
if you get if all of your clients are in one area and then you have this one over here and they start asking you for things that take up your time, you get scope creep in terms of you're starting to, and now I'm using nothing but buzzwords.
I haven't heard scope creep in like a decade. That's a great word.
So, you start to build things or you start to do things that aren't at the very center of what your business is supposed to be or starting to be. So it's really important to understand who is your customer and why, and how that impacts the revenue that you can make over time.
Well, and something that's interesting with that too is you could you'd be going down your target customer list and you could realize that they are this demographic, this demographic, this demographic, this demographic. And then everything is the same as every other kind of platform out there, right? For whatever it is. But then there's something in there that you find out that actually the one thing that's different is all these people like to hike, or all these people like to eat sushi, or something like that. And that's that one little nugget that you're looking at that you can then take to that next level. Or they all like to play in the sandbox at their kids' elementary school, right? Whatever that thing might be. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for that hook so that you can actually market to them instead of being the same as everyone else, which I think most businesses can never get to that point because they never find that sushi lover, that hiker, if you will, which are all things that you told us that you like. So that's why I use those examples. But, maybe it's this person uses Brooks running shoes, and that's the one little thing that had to hook you. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's the level of detail that can be the difference between success and failure, is knowing that, we need to find the people who are shopping at a store, that they care between the two kind of nuanced brands in a particular camping market. And that they know that it's because this little camping stove has a little piece that hooks up that is perfect for just, gripping their particular, pot that they have, and the other one doesn't. And it's understanding that if the more you know, the more you can use that data to make relevant business decisions.
How long has Virginia offered this program?
In its current form, 3.5 years. We started in January of 2018.
And you probably, there's no way to quantify this, but I mean, you essentially are saving businesses. It could be a matter of survival and failure. You could be saving businesses from spending hundreds of thousands of dollars keeping them from going down the wrong path. So there's a huge benefit that way.
Yep.
How much does it cost to go through a program like this?
Well, for us, because we are funded by the Commonwealth and in part by the federal government, nothing to entrepreneurs. Our whole purpose is that we want to make sure that the companies that need help, that can't afford to hire, a team of consultants, can get that quality level of support. And it's, in the long run, it improves the economy because we're able to make sure a large amount of companies are finding success and finding it faster than they would have otherwise. So thankfully, we are receiving a lot of support. So entrepreneurs who want to get the assistance from our program don't have to spend any money.
And there's your call to action, everybody. Another buzzword. Yeah, you have a program that is free of charge, that is funded by the state and by the SBA to ensure that you are starting off on the right foot. You can identify your customers, you know how to get started, and it's absolutely free. And Zach, if you can pop up the website again where people can go to
I was just counting buzzwords.
Yeah. There it is.
Virginia SBDC.org/program/ICAP.
But I mean,
what does ICAP stand for?
Innovation Commercialization Assistance Program.
But it's just so important. I mean, we've all seen people that have dumped an entire life savings into something only for it to fail. And on the flip side, people have waited so long to launch because it wasn't ready yet. And then the opportunity has completely passed them by because they're afraid to launch. And this...
Yeah.
And then they play the blame game. I mean, that's the worst part. It's like you had a chance when you were trying to talk about this 7 years ago, but you kind of got to get it out early. From a statewide perspective, so this is statewide. How does it get administered? I was never good at English. How do you do it? Is it something that you guys do online? Is it something that you go to every city? How does it get thrown into the wolves?
So for the first 2+ years until last March, we would do in-person cohorts. So we went down as far southwest as Roanoke, and we went to Hampton Roads, Northern Virginia, Fredericksburg, Leesburg, Charlottesville, Harrisonburg, and we were planning to go to Lynchburg, Richmond, and a couple other locations in 2020. Obviously, we canceled everything after March and have been virtual since then. And what that has allowed us to do is anybody who's an entrepreneur who needs the assistance, regardless of where they are in the Commonwealth, can get connected to the program at almost any time. So the process is somebody gets connected to us through whatever means that was, and we connect them with an ICAP mentor. And we have a team of folks that are all successful entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who are practitioners of the lean startup methodology process. And we'll start to work with them one-on-one, and that's the real value. A majority of our clients go through our introductory program to learn about lean startup and how we use the process so that they get as good as they can during our 2-week introductory course. After that, they've learned enough to understand how to do that on an ongoing basis. And rather than doing it as part of a longer program, they work individually with their ICAP mentor to, all right, I'm going to do 10 more interviews that are focused on this. And then they hold a meeting to learn about what happened, review the notes, and then use that information to help the entrepreneur make some decisions about, okay, I learned that it's this group of people who are actually making purchases. So I'm now going to narrow my focus to only interview those people for my next 10 or 20 interviews. And then in terms of our greater ICAP community, we have monthly calls that are virtual, and that helps to have guest speakers, showcase some companies that are hitting some big milestones, as well as those that are coming up against barriers and would like some help from our greater ICAP teaching team. So we try to keep people as engaged as possible. And at some point in the future, we will go back to some in-person programmings. We usually do that as reunions. So we get people together who have already become part of the program and that they can get together in person. And then we also hold meetings throughout the Commonwealth, both with partners, potential partners, and then prospective clients that want to learn more.
So you start several years ago, in-person cohort style for a few weeks, and then something happened in 2020. Not sure what that thing was. That happened in March of 2020. Maybe you can let us know. At some point, people will ask, like, what happened in March of 2020? That made things so weird. So you guys do a quick little pivot, and then you just said that you're gonna boomerang back and do some sort of in-person. Why the switch to go back? It seems like you made some points that it seemed like it was better that people can pop in at any time, but now, I mean, I guess you just realized that maybe I don't know why boomerang back to in person when the stuff seemed to be working best online.
So we are going to continue to have virtual programming. The piece that is going to be back in person is what we call road shows. So going around the Commonwealth to meet with the potential partners, current partners, prospective clients, and then also doing reunions for folks that are already in the community. So that piece will be going back to in person. The introductory program that we have, we will continue to offer that as a virtual option. If there are partners, like we have a number of partners in the Hampton Roads area that say, all right, well, we have this number of companies that we want to have go through the program, and we'd like to do it in person. We want to be flexible enough to where ultimately our goal is to first meet the needs of our clients, but also meet the needs of our partners. So if they have found a number of companies that want to go through and become part of ICAP and use the resource, then we want to make sure that we're, in a figurative sense, no pun intended, meeting them where they are. So if that means us coming down to Hampton Roads again to do something in person, we'll do that.
It's interesting that you mentioned program partners that are in already existing areas. There's a ton of, what would be my guess is, ton of these things in the 757 area, a ton of this in Charlottesville, I'm sure, a ton of this in the I guess you can't say DC, in the Northern Virginia area, in the Blacksburg area, and you're just another thing, right? You're another program that's coming in. How have you been able to get the buy-in from these programs so that businesses can go through your thing and not just their thing, because there's a ton of Tim probably has the correct buzzword for it, but there's a ton of overlap in a lot of this stuff where it seems like everyone's doing the same programming or similar programming, yet nothing gets universally adopted. So that, at the end of the day, the business is what's important. So how have you been able, growing the business is what's the most important thing, right? That's what I always preach is. So how have you guys been able to get the buy-in from these cities and these programs in a specific area where you guys are doing similar, very or maybe not even complementary things?
Sure, absolutely. So our goal from the beginning has always been to be additive to the resources that are already existing. So we will come in and we will work in partnership with groups that may have a local program. But the benefit of ICAP and the reason that we are out of the state office of the Virginia SBDC is first and foremost to add capability and capacity to local SBDC offices. So we have 27 offices throughout the Commonwealth. And rather than needing to have each one of them individually hire somebody who can provide technology mentorship and advice, we are owning that out of the state office. So in some areas, ICAP is the soup to nuts programming for helping entrepreneurs. So if anybody at any point needs assistance, they're coming to ICAP. In the case of Hampton Roads, we are working with a large number of the existing organizations that are there to make sure that assistance is provided. So, for instance, there's the 757 Accelerate program, and they're looking to make their selection soon for their fall cohort. Our goal is to, one, help provide recommendations to their fall cohort through having our members, our member clients apply, and that those folks are in a better position to get the most out of the accelerator because they're fully prepared. And then on the flip side, the accelerator can only take so many companies. So we also offer the companies that weren't selected an opportunity to get assistance to help accelerate them. We would bill our introductory program as a pre-accelerator so that we can get them, again, fully prepared so that the next time they're in a much better position to apply and get accepted. So that's an example of how we try to work with folks to make sure that they're getting what they need, and to your point, have the business win, and then create partnerships within an entrepreneurial ecosystem that are complementary as opposed to additive.
Got it. One of your cohorters, or whatever the correct vernacular is, Jesse Hepburn, says he's in the cohort right now. There we go.
Yep, absolutely. And we'll have about an hour and 15 minutes until Jesse and I will be on the same call for our midpoint. So the way that the introductory course works is we have a few days in week one where we're going over some lessons, some curriculum, and also having teams talk about what they're doing, share about what their customer segment is, what they believe it is, what they believe their customer is doing now. And then they have a week to go out and talk to their first 10 customers, do interviews, meet with their ICAP mentor, and then at the midpoint, they report back what they learned. And based on what they learned, how they're going to update their hypotheses and what they're going to do next. And then we give them another week to go out, talk to another 10 potential customers and refine what they're learning. And then we have a close on the last day where there's kind of a final lesson, and then we do final presentations, which then leads into the long-term one-on-one mentorship with an advisor, now that they're fully up to speed to be able to do this without the same level of support that's needed throughout the introductory program.
I would imagine that coachability is a huge, huge factor in this program. I'm curious as to how do you filter out people that you can determine if they're coachable or uncoachable, or does that wait until you're in the program and then people wash out because they're not coachable? What's your overall philosophy on coachability within entrepreneurship?
I think it's pivotal, and investors will probably tell you, at least the ones that we work with, If a company is not coachable, they aren't going to invest, because the number one factor of a business being able to succeed is that they're constantly learning new information. And based off of that new information, they're able to adjust and not going to use any buzzwords here, but they're able to change course a little bit based on that information to find success. And from our standpoint, this has been a long road of figuring out how do we make sure the people that are selected to join our introductory program, because everybody can get advice from ICAP and everybody can get connected with our ICAP mentors, but to actually be selected for our introductory program, you need to be coachable. You need to be able to show that you can take advice, that you can take feedback. And if somebody says, well, I built this thing, I know better than the customer, and I just want you to tell me that I'm doing a good job, it's not a relationship that we can, ultimately work with that person, because our goal is to provide them advice to help guide them down a particular path. But if they believe they are the sole keeper of the best way to go down a path, there's not much we can do. We do try to highlight things that will show them that being open to learning new things will have tremendous business value to them. And a large number of the people that we work with, they see that, they recognize that, and then they take a step back and say, okay, I do need to be a little bit more open. I should take the time to learn about this particular aspect of my customer segment or the market. And, we go on to generally have those people become the biggest proponents of ICAP and our process, because they went from, I am a hard and fast, I'm never going to listen to you because you could never know anything more than I do, to, oh, you taught me something and it was really valuable. So we don't give up on anybody. We really try to push to make sure that they will become coachable. But if we see that at the beginning that they're not, we take more time to work with them one-on-one before we bring them into a setting, because we have had people drop out of our program because they say, I don't want to go through this. And for whatever reason there may be, and there are a lot of them, we say, okay, fine. We're here if you want to come back and you want some help. But there absolutely are people out there that aren't coachable.
And I would imagine week one is probably really telling, just from one, to determine if they will talk to the first 10 customers, and the information that they find out from actually talking to the first 10 customers. So I would imagine that that's a really pivotal moment.
See, I'm not the only one who can't speak English. Administered. It's interesting. When we were having technical difficulties with you, Josh, we talked about books that we're reading right now, and I'm reading a book by Tim Glover, something like that, called Relentless. And one of the things that he talks about in this book, he's the coach of Michael Jordan, like his fitness and mental coach. And he goes, you hire me and you play by my rules, and that's it. And so it's interesting how he's like, you can go to your normal coach and just have him, but like, if you want the best, you're going to play by my rules. And it's interesting how you hear so many people talk about not being coachable. Is there a line where like someone can push back and show that like, no, like this is the right way, and maybe the people who are giving him advice aren't the right ones? Because I think about events where people go and pitch their product 5, 6, 7, 10 minutes, whatever. And the judges are giving them feedback, but the judges are definitely not customers. The judges will never be customers, yet they're giving them feedback. When is it? And to me, that entrepreneur who's pushing back in some of these cases is probably doing it in the right kind of way. Where do you see it being appropriate that the entrepreneur, the business owner, is the one, and it's acceptable to push back on some of the advice that they're giving? Because oftentimes I think that the advice that they are getting is by the wrong person and is terrible advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in our program, we say the only person who you should be listening to make business decisions is your customer. Now, advisors can absolutely tell you how to put together financial projections, but you have to give the data. Somebody can help you put together a marketing campaign, but you have to tell them who to target. So it's really this really important point of, if a row of judges says, oh, that's never going to work, the pushback is, well, I have 10 customers right now that are paying X number of dollars. And the only reason I can't have 100 customers is because I require capital to purchase things in advance at a large enough level to make it financially feasible in order to do it. Yeah, because the market is king. And I think that there's no better way to respond to folks than to use that data. And then frankly, if let's say you're doing your pitch and the investor or the team that's, judging says, well, we don't care about that, then those probably aren't the people that you want to be accepting, money from. You want to make sure that if you're getting money from somebody, that they're bringing something other than money to the table. And so that's an important point of push back with the data that is going to be relevant to the people who understand that the market and the customers in that market are really the only people that matter in that capacity.
Out of curiosity, I don't know the answer to this. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. However, do you all measure in terms of where a business is before they start the program and where they finish? Historically, does a company increase revenue or increase customer count by a certain number or a certain percentage?
Yeah, so we follow a couple things, and there's the whole spectrum of where people are in terms of the phase of their business. And, I talked about that, person who just had an idea on the back of their pizza box. And today they came to us. We have started working with people as far from that as you can get, where they've actually already received some, initial investment, and they still need help. And a lot of it comes down to they're really good at selling their idea, and they may have even gotten some traction, but they don't know what to do from there. And that's where we can come in, and why we have our introductory program, because no matter where a company is, you may have somebody in a cohort that they just have an idea, and you have somebody who they are already selling, but they're doing the same work because it all comes back to learning from the customer and then using that information to make business decisions. So the person who is just at the idea stage is going to be asking different questions and looking for different information than the one that's further along. But the process is what's important, and following that. So ultimately, we can work with anybody from that idea on the napkin all the way through, they've received 1 or 2 rounds of funding. Generally, where we don't work with companies anymore is, one, if they're above the SBA's limit of what a small business is, because that's where we're getting a large portion of our funding. And then also, if they have created a true board of directors or advisors who should be doing this work. And in that case, we can, work with that entire team to help get them up to speed and get them understanding how to follow this process. And then we'll leave them be to follow their own path. But really, everybody in that sweet spot, which we call early stage companies, we're able to help wherever they are.
For a company that, I lost my train of thought. Tim. I literally thought about this for 5 minutes. I didn't write it down.
No, so one thing. So when you talk about early stage, do you require companies? Do they have to be an entity? Do they have to be a registered business? Can they be, or do you help? Do they not have to be, and you help them get established? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So ultimately, they don't need to have any official status as a company. We try to limit the barriers as much as possible. So the only real 2 qualifiers for being able to join our program is there has to be some sort of tie to the Commonwealth. So they either are living here or they have established their business and there's an office, they're headquartered in Virginia, something to that effect. And then the second piece is that they are a technology or innovation-driven company. So we try to make sure that there aren't barriers, because we want to be able to have that person who just had the idea come to us and get help without having to go through too many steps. We have 2 things that people need to do. They need to register as a client so that we can track our time with them. And then the second is to just apply to the program so that we're getting some very specific information about their idea that will give us a baseline to go off of. And then we just start meeting with that person to learn more, get up to speed, and then start working with them in order to move forward.
So wearing a I Heart Virginia shirt isn't enough?
That's one step just below the threshold.
Yeah, I like your humor there. I remember my question because I wrote it down. What is your advice for someone with the program that is coming in and they buy into, I need to talk to the customer so I can learn stuff like that, but they are not gregarious. They are terrible at public speaking. They're terrible at just communication in general, which I think is the overwhelming majority of people, to then go and talk to these people that they know is a good an idea, but they can't get over the fact that they're just not good at that communication aspect. So when someone's in that spectrum, what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, frankly, like you said, there are a lot of people in that category, and especially people who are used to working alone in a lab, that they're not used to having to interact with anybody else, but they do their thing, they build their things. So for us, it's usually start small, interview somebody you know about some basic thing. So talk to them about, like what we were talking earlier about, what's your favorite food, and ask them questions. And start to ask follow-up questions to get into some nitty-gritty details of, I talked about liking sushi and Asian food. Getting deep into, what is it about that food that makes you feel that it's your favorite and that you want to keep getting more, so that you develop that instinct to say, oh, they said something interesting that I never thought of before. And then you can get into, all right, maybe you interview a friend or a coworker about the actual topic that you're looking for. And then you can get in a safe environment where you're asking the types of questions that you would be to a potential customer. And then you go to an actual customer and you will be that much more prepared. So
and you feel a lot more comfortable. That's good.
Yeah. Baby
like
steps.
That. Yeah. My favorite question to ask someone as an icebreaker is, what are you watching on Netflix? I didn't ask you that because, well, I don't know why, but I think that's a great icebreaker question. Josh, what's something that we haven't talked about today that you want to talk about?
I am very excited that, based on the success of the companies that have worked with ICAP over the past 3.5 years, we have been successful in getting some more resources to expand our team. So we are able to work with more companies across the entire spectrum of the startup lifecycle, from that early idea stage all the way through folks that are transitioning from a startup to that growth organization that they need to get some help with. How do you actually build the company itself from, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 people to 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 people. And so we're very excited by that. And we're looking forward to, in a couple months, being able to expand the team to make sure that regardless of what stage a startup is in, that they are getting what they need to be successful at no cost.
Very exciting. We will have that link in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. Tim, any final thoughts?
Yeah. I think for those that are wondering, what is the time commitment for a business or a founder that goes through the program?
Sure. So joining ICAP, at the end of the day, it is as much time as you put in, you'll get out. If you want to meet with an advisor once a month, we see a lot of people that do that. If you want to meet with somebody and you have a need to meet with somebody once a week because you're getting a lot of stuff done, we can meet that demand. For our introductory program, it is about 15 hours of the program itself. There's another couple hours of meetings with your ICAP mentor. And then there is the interviewing itself, which is going out and talking to customers. And that can be anywhere from, 2 hours to 20 hours. It depends on how much time people are putting into it and how many interviews they get. We want people, as I mentioned, to get 20 interviews by the end of the 2 weeks. We've had some people who are upwards of 40 interviews, and the more you get, the more time it takes, but the more data that you get, and ultimately the better it is for your business. So the time commitment is, at a minimum, we're talking about 40 hours over about a 3-week period. And it pays dividends, because that's why we say it accelerates commercialization, because you're learning that much more in such a short amount of time so that you can skip steps.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I guess it's just like sharpening your saw before you cut the tree.
Yeah.
Love
And
it.
we work all the time with folks that they have full-time jobs and they have to manage being able to do this and that. And entrepreneurship's tough, and you got to be able to hustle and manage. And we try to work with people as much as possible. We have a school teacher in our current cohort, and it took him a long time to get to the point where he could join the program because he had time commitment that it didn't work for a lot of it. So we try to help and be flexible as possible to make it work.
Awesome.
Love it. Josh, appreciate your time. Looking forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, thank you very much. I
One of
appreciate
those
being on the show.
situations when you come on down or I go up there. So appreciate it. Definitely check out the program. Link is in the description. And until next time, we'll see you guys soon. Peace.
So long, everyone. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.